So listen, how many people has this happened to, right? You meet a person, or in this case, like this video here, you see a picture of them and you assume, you know, and that's where we go wrong, assuming like, oh, that person's probably a pretty cool person, innocent looking, you know what I mean? But then you either get to know them and you realize that's a lie, this fool's a killer, or you see them on the news and realize, whew, dodged that bullet. You know, how many have had those type of close calls? Like, I know y'all got some stories of some dodge that bullet moment. I was almost involved with a killer, like, or somebody who's just flat out crazy. Man, this video here is the top 30 normal looking pictures with disturbing backstories. Let's get into it.
It is a picture his best friend says Hadley claimed would be his last.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the most unassuming snapshots with the darkest backstories and explanations.
When the police found that camera and they said, oh, the camera's destroyed, it's been through the washing machine, but they take that little memory card and they find these photos?
Number 30, John Edward Robinson's family portrait. At first glance, this seems like a normal family photo, depicting the classic nuclear setup, complete with a baby sitting on her father's lap. However, the reality is much darker. The man in the picture is John Edward Robinson, later exposed as a con man and a serial killer who operated in Kansas City. In 1985, Robinson cunningly befriended...
Could y'all say he's that by just looking at this photo? Looking at this photo, you would think... First glance, you're like, oh man, look at this family, man. Beautiful family. Oh man, they living the dream.
The infant's struggling mom under the guise of providing them with a better life. Soon afterwards, he killed the mother and gave her baby to his brother to raise.
They thought everything was on the up and up. They had the papers, they had the adoption forms that looked like been signed by judges and attorneys. They had no clue.
To make things worse, Robinson remained in the girl's life, posing as her uncle, until he was finally arrested over a decade later. This portrait captured a final moment of peace before the lives of several people were irreparably changed forever.
John Robinson's got that baby and posing for pictures in his house with that baby, bouncing on his knee with his brother and sister-in-law there who have come down to Chicago to get their new adopted baby.
Number 29, his master's voice. Who knew a logo could be so devastating? While the sight of a cute dog listening to a phonograph seems adorable upon first glance, the story behind it is much sadder. According to the original artist, his inspiration came from watching the pooch listening to his late owner's voice and seemingly trying to figure out where it was coming from. That explanation immediately takes the painting from cute to tragic. The thought of a pet still being able to recognize the people who raised them even long after their deaths is bittersweet at best. There's no doubt at all just how good of a boy he truly was, and his unwavering loyalty to his late master has been immortalized forever. Number 28, hiking tragedy. Do you notice anything unusual in this photo of someone climbing a waterfall? While it looks like a regular landscape, there's one thing that sticks out: a sudden shock of red hair. That color saved a young woman who had fallen off the same cliff in Santa Barbara County in 2014 and been badly hurt. She blended in with the scenery, so much so that the photographer had captured their friend's climb without realizing she was in the background. Although they eventually noticed her and assisted in her rescue, it was an extremely close call. We can only imagine the horror the photographer would have felt had they not noticed her in time, and instead found her in the shots when it was too late. Number 27, last photo of Abigail Williams. In 2017, teenager Liberty German innocently posted an image of her friend Abigail Williams crossing a bridge in Delphi, Indiana. Looking at it, you wouldn't think anything was amiss. Just a couple of pals having fun. Later that same day, they were both captured and subsequently killed by an unknown assailant.
This is the bridge that we've all seen in the images released to the media. You can see now some flowers left behind in memory of the girls.
A video on German's phone showed an unknown man ordering them down a hill. This provided police with a lead, and on October 31st, 2022, they charged a suspect with the murders, who has since confessed to his wife while in prison, according to court documents.
It was Libby who managed to take a cell phone picture of a strange man on the bridge. He's the prime suspect.
While the case is...
That's why I be saying y'all gotta be careful going across these bridges, trails, different things like that, because they know, they sit there and wait. They know once y'all get on these bridges, there's nowhere for you to go. You can't run from them, because if you go off, you're going off the side and you're probably going to kill yourself. So it's like you cannot escape them, and they got you right where they want you. So they wait out by these bridges to see somebody walk on them, and then they know they got you. So you got to be careful, man. I know everybody loves to explore and see the world and adventure hike and do different things, but be careful, man. These fools out here crazy.
Still unsolved, the pictures have been vital to the investigation and will hopefully be enough to help put the murderer behind bars for good. Number 26, James Bulger and his abductors. Some images highlight just how cruel the world can be. Upon first glance, seeing a couple of young kids walking hand in hand wouldn't trigger any suspicion. To many, it would just look like an older and younger sibling. However, that idea was turned on its head after one horrifying instance. On February 12, 1993 in Merseyside, England, security footage captured two children walking together, an older boy and a toddler.
James was being led away by two young boys. Immediately then, it confirmed the witness that who stated earlier that there were two boys on the canal bank. It then became very worrying.
Unbeknownst to adults nearby, the toddler, James Bulger, was being kidnapped. He lost his life later that day at the hands of the older child and his friend. Looking at the original footage, no one would have guessed his true intentions. Justice was swiftly served, but the incident shook the nation and started a larger discourse about punishing minors. Number 25, scuba diving.
What do they do in that situation? Do you hold him and try him till when he's 18? Like, what do you do? Because I'm sitting here thinking, like, that's a tough place to be in. That's a tough place to be in for our judicial system, fam. Like, they can't get it right with adults.
Death. What was supposed to be a fun, peaceful activity suddenly became a crime scene. While going scuba diving, a man took a photo of his wife underwater. This could have been a cool shot, but their attention swiftly shifted to a shocking discovery in the background. Behind his partner was the body of another diver lying on the floor of the reef. This belonged to Tina Watson, who had been on her honeymoon in Australia before her untimely death on October 22, 2003. The news caused immediate speculation that culminated in her husband being convicted of manslaughter.
They argue he planned to kill his new wife, also he could collect on her life insurance policy.
The fact that this was all caused by one seemingly innocent picture is harrowing. Had it not been taken, her body may not have been discovered until much later. Number 24, Haiku Stairs. Hawaii boasts a plethora of gorgeous scenery, both natural and human-made. This includes the captivating Haiku Stairs, which unfortunately have been closed off to hikers for decades due to their dangerous state. Despite this, many adventurers still brave the trek. In early 2015, teenage hiker Delano Pua walked the trail and posted photos of the view. After he went missing, those posts became the only clues. His parents soon made a chilling discovery: a hidden figure camouflaged within the greenery, seemingly stalking their son. This revelation transformed the case from a simple disappearance to something more sinister. While the trail has gone cold, the family is still determined to identify the man pictured and get closure on what happened to their son. Number 23, Franklin Delano Floyd and Suzanne Marie Savakis. What seems like a wholesome portrait of a father and daughter is actually much more twisted and horrific. The man in the photo, Franklin Delano Floyd, abducted Suzanne Savakis as a young girl and raised her. As if that wasn't twisted enough, he ended up marrying her when she grew up, even forcing her to take on a series of aliases to keep the police at bay.
Floyd knew the law enforcement would be looking for a man, his daughter, and her child. They would not be looking for a man and his wife and their child. And that's why they stopped and got married.
He ended up taking her life when she tried escaping as an adult. When looking at an image of them, many wouldn't even fathom that so much evil could be brewing just beneath the surface. Although he was eventually imprisoned for his crimes, the chilling snapshot shows how long he had gotten away with his twisted deeds. Number 22.
I thought about that one day, man. How many people you think we pass by, just in passing, that are actually in trouble but are too afraid to say it or speak up or yell help to passerbyers? Like, how many times do we pass by somebody who's being held against their will and we don't even know it. Like, that's the scary part. You hear the stories about people being kidnapped and they're down the street from their home and they've been kidnapped for years. And their family are tearing the world up looking for them and they're down the street being held captive. Like, that's the scary part of some of this stuff.
Class of 1999. Class photos are not a new concept. They've been around for decades and show a glimpse of the graduating cohorts. This one looks to be completely normal until you look at the top left corner. There, it's easier to notice a few kids pretending to point guns at the camera. Those students, Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, the perpetrators of the horrific Columbine massacre.
Kids, grab your friends, hold them tight, and never be mad at people because it could happen in a second that they'll be gone.
Their pose served as an early red flag prior to their act, but the group was so large that they completely slipped into the background. Once the shooting had occurred, the picture was seen in a new light. Now, it serves as a reminder that monsters can be anywhere, even hiding in plain sight in the high school gymnasium. Number 21, Harold Agnu holding Fat Man H-bomb. It's interesting how even culturally significant and controversial moments can have the most banal beginnings. Before the nuclear bombs were dropped in World War II, they had been worked on by top scientists. During this developmental phase, they looked nothing like the weapons of mass destruction they're known to be today.
Actually, we did not witness Hiroshima. We were busy with our instruments.
In fact, they appeared so innocuous that when physicist Harold Agnu was photographed holding one of their cores, people didn't even realize what it was. His smile and the seemingly ordinary object in his hand masked the project's true intentions. This picture of Agnu holding the plutonium is a stark reminder of the people behind some of the most devastatingly powerful objects in human history. Number 20, Tragedy by the Sea. At first glance, this photo might appear romantic. After all, it shows a couple on a windswept beach. But look closer, and the woman's distraught expression says it all. Right before photographer John L. Gaunt took the shot, the couple's 19-month-old son had been happily playing in their yard. But he wandered off and disappeared into the waves. The couple is standing on the shore, realizing their son is gone. This photo actually won the 1955 Pulitzer Prize, and given the backstory, it's a haunting shot of sudden and unexpected tragedy. Number 19, the Space Shuttle Challenger crew. It's unclear where the astronauts in this photo are going, but they appear excited and optimistic about whatever's on the horizon. Doing some digging, you'll find that the crew was walking out of the operations and checkout building. They were headed for Pad 39B, where the Space Shuttle Challenger was about to take off. The STS-51L mission was notable for its diverse crew, although that's sadly not what it's best remembered for.
Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Only a minute after launching, the Space Shuttle exploded.
73.5 seconds. Challenger's engine shut down. The last data from Challenger is radio to Earth.
While nobody knows precisely when each crew member died, nobody survived after the spacecraft hit the ocean. This photo was taken on January 28, 1986, mere hours before the crew unknowingly embarked on what would be their final mission. Number 18, Christopher McCandless. With a grin across his face, the man in this picture appears to be content and healthy. This bearded explorer is Christopher McCandless, the subject of the 2007 biopic Into the Wild.
Is there anybody here?
Leaving his old life behind, McCandless decided to fend for himself in Mother Nature's backyard, eventually seeking refuge in an abandoned Fairbanks Bus 142. In August 1992, the 24-year-old McCandless died at Stampede Trail, Alaska, most likely due to starvation. Based on the last self-photo he took, it's evident McCandless knew his days were numbered. While it's hard to make out, the paper McCandless is holding is his farewell message, reading, quote, "I have had a happy life and thank the Lord. Goodbye, and may God bless all." Number 17, lightning strike. While the numbers vary, the odds of getting struck by lightning are relatively slim. That doesn't mean you shouldn't take lightning safety seriously, though. This photo of 18-year-old Michael McQuilkin and his 12-year-old brother Sean has served as a cautionary tale ever since it was taken in 1975. Posing together at Morro Rock, the brothers were goofing around with their hair standing on end. Their static hair and those storm clouds in the background were more foreboding than either realized, as lightning struck them shortly after their sister took the picture. Another hiker died, and while the brother survived, Sean was left with third-degree burns and took his own life in 1989. Michael continues to spread awareness about the dangers and warning signs of lightning. Number 16, another day in Omagh. Looking at this photo, the first thing you're inclined to notice is the man standing in the street and the child on his shoulders. Meanwhile, the red car parked on the side of the road appears inconsequential. What you might not realize is that the photo was taken in Omagh, a Northern Ireland town, on August 15, 1998, not long before this car blew up. The Real Irish Republican Army, a splinter group, executed this car bombing 5 days after the Good Friday Agreement was signed. Although the Real IRA claimed that innocent civilians were not their target, 29 lives were lost in the bombing, and roughly 220 were injured.
It was the biggest.
How can you do that in public and then say innocent civilians was not our target? What do you mean? You did this in public, a public place, public street with people walking around. Who else did you think you was gonna possibly hit too? Like, just the logic and the response, it just makes no sense to me, man. I'm sorry.
Loss of life in a single attack in Northern Ireland.
While the man and child thankfully survived the bombing, the person behind the camera did not. Number 15, David A. Johnston. While not a household name, David A. Johnston was a revered volcanologist who, along with the United States Geological Survey, helped save thousands of people through his on-site work. Tragically, Johnston lost his own life in the process. All seems well in this photo, as Johnston sits in a chair outside looking into the camera. Little did anyone know that within the next 13 hours, Johnston would perish in the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. The eruption, preceded by seismic activity, was first reported by Johnston, who radioed the message, quote, "Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it." Within the next seconds, the signal went out and Johnston was never heard from again.
So I guess I had the realization right away that this was some kind of a tragedy. And on the one hand, it was this huge, exciting, and interesting magmatic eruption, and on the other hand, I was pretty certain that something terrible had happened to Dave.
While his remains were never found, it's believed that Johnston died at Coldwater 2, a post that wasn't as safe as anticipated.
I think one of the things to put in perspective is that 234 square miles of that area of Washington were devastated by that blast. So 5.7 miles?
Yeah.
That was within that devastation zone, the blast zone.
Number 14.
And if we don't start looking and do more research and find, because it's not only the volcanoes we know about that I'm worried about, it's the ones that we don't know about that I'm worried about. That could just go off any day and we'd be like, we didn't even know that was a volcano, or we didn't even know a volcano was there. That's what I'm worried about too.
Mark Jackson's basketball card. For die-hard sports fans, you'll recognize the player on this basketball card as Mark Jackson, who started his NBA career with the New York Knicks and later coached the Golden State Warriors. At first glance, this card would likely blend in with the rest of your collection. Take a closer look at the lower left-hand corner, though. You see those two young fans sitting in the front row? They are Lyle and Eric Menendez, two wealthy brothers who took the lives of their allegedly abusive parents on August 20th, 1989.
The brothers who were thought to have it all, at times acting out, even going as far as robbing houses until they were caught.
The brothers weren't arrested for these crimes until March 8th, 1990, and in between that time, they spent an extravagant amount of money.
So at the time, nothing seemed suspicious to you about them?
No.
But soon detectives shifted their focus.
The brothers were out there spending money like it was water.
It appears that some of that fortune went towards Knicks tickets before their apprehension. Number 13, Rodney Alcala. If we asked you to name the man in this photo, you might take a wild guess and say Christoph Waltz if he had Weird Al's hairdresser. In reality, he's Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer. How did he get such an outlandish nickname? Because Alcala appeared on the dating game prior to his 1979 arrest.
The woman who won a date with him ended up backing out, saying she found him creepy.
Come on, over here.
Her intuition probably saved her life. Others would not be so fortunate.
While his total victim count could be as high as 130, Alcala was trialed for 5 murders in 2010, almost 31 years after his apprehension. Alcala represented himself in court, as seen in this picture. Even more bizarre, Alcala was his own defense witness, asking himself, quote, "Rodney, would you please tell us about your hair?" Alcala ultimately received the death sentence, but died of natural causes while awaiting execution. Number 12, Ayano Tokumasu. Remember that scene in Superman 2 where a little boy falls over the rail at Niagara Falls?
Oh my God!
Well, that sort of thing happens more often than you think, but Superman sadly isn't around to save the day. On the surface, there doesn't seem to be anything particularly special about this photo, which sees several people gathering at Niagara River. The woman in the red sweater is Ayano Tokumasu, an exchange student from Japan. If you think standing on that pillar seems kind of dangerous, you'd be right. Not long after the photo was taken, she lost her balance and fell over the edge, ultimately going down Horseshoe Falls. Tokumasu was swept from the river's Canadian side to its American side, where her lifeless body was discovered.
People just go too far. You know, I don't blame anything on the park. I just think people wanted to get that extra edge, get closer, and unfortunately, things happen.
Number 11, the SS Grandcamp. The SS Grandcamp may not be a household name like the Titanic, but it's forever linked to the Texas City disaster. And this photo captured the vessel just before tragedy spiraled out of control. On April 16, 1947, smoke was seen emitting from the docked ship in Texas City. A fire had broken out with about 2,200 tons of ammonium nitrate aboard. This naturally amounted to an explosion, but that was only the beginning.
Texas City, Texas was joined by a tremendous blast.
The blast ignited a subsequent explosion on the High Flyer, another ship carrying ammonium nitrate.
And about 8:15, they housed me to come aboard the ship, that they had a fire down in the hold. Went aboard the ship, and we seen smoke coming up from between the cargo and the side of the ship.
The ensuing chain reaction resulted in a loss of 581 lives, with only one survivor from the local fire department. Number 10, Apollo 1 pool party. The space pod in the swimming pool is only the second weirdest thing about this photo. Like, how often do you see astronauts lounging on water floats while wearing their spacesuits? Surely there must be a humorous story behind such a surreal image. Unfortunately, it's quite the opposite. The suited-up astronauts in this photo were Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger B. Chaffee. They were training for the Apollo 1 mission, which was planned to commence in February of 1967. On January 27th of that year, a fire broke out in the cabin during a pre-launch test. Unable to open the hatch door, the three men perished in the fire, which was caused by electrical problems. Thus, the mission ended before it even started.
The pad where Grissom, Chaffee, and White died is now a memorial. Lieutenant Colonel Virgil Grissom, U.S. Air Force, and Lieutenant Commander Roger Chaffee are buried at the Arlington National Cemetery. Lieutenant Colonel Edward White is interred at West Point Military Academy.
Number 9. Bear photographer. There are countless photos of bears out there, and this one doesn't look much different from all the rest. Since the picture was taken from a distance and the bear isn't charging, the photographer seemingly isn't in any immediate danger. After Darsh Patel snapped this pic using his phone, however, the bear started to follow him and his friends. The group split up as the bear began to close in on them, ultimately pursuing Patel. His phone was eventually found with animal teeth marks, while Patel's body was discovered at a nearby ravine.
A scenic Sunday afternoon ended in horror when 5 hikers crossed paths with a 300-pound black bear that looked similar to this one.
The bear was still hanging around the 22-year-old's fatally mauled remains, and the authorities took the wild animal out.
We believe this bear was about 4 years old. It was not a tagged bear, meaning it had no history with the DEP. There was no research done on this bear that we know of. It had no previous incidents of aggression that would have called it to our attention.
This photo op came at a steep price for Patel and the bear. Number 8. What are you smiling at? The two men being escorted in this photo are Richard Hickok and Perry Edward Smith. Although handcuffs are visible, the jolly smile on Smith's face suggests they're only in for a mild offense. This couldn't be further from the truth. Ever hear of a book called In Cold Blood? Well, Hickok and Smith provided the basis for this best-selling true crime novel. The two criminals were convicted for the Clutter family murders and sentenced to death.
Richard Hickok, the first to be executed, decided by a coin toss. Perry Smith's was second.
In this chilling photo, Hickok and Smith can be seen leaving the courtroom right after receiving the guilty verdict. Much can be said about Smith's haunting grin. If there's one takeaway from the image, though, it's that this crime was indeed cold-blooded. Number 7. BTK at graduation. Dennis Rader was his church's president, a Cub Scout leader, and an all-around pillar of the community. As you can tell from this photo, Rader was also a family man who seemed quite proud of his daughter Carrie at her college graduation. This would all be overshadowed, though, when Rader was exposed as the BTK Strangler, the letters standing for Bind, Torture, Kill, his preferred MO.
When BTK came forward, everybody's life changed. He would see a woman walking, and he would say, "She's next."
Over the course of multiple decades, this seemingly ordinary guy took 10 lives. In 2005, the authorities used Carrie Rader's DNA to link her father to a crime scene, culminating in his arrest.
Carrie had graduated from K-State, and while there, had tests at health services, both a pap smear and a biopsy. Investigators traveled to Manhattan with a subpoena in hand for those smears. Her DNA, a direct match to DNA left at BTK crime scenes.
Rader pled guilty and was subsequently sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences. About 14 years after her father was captured, Carrie released a book entitled A Serial Killer's Daughter, My Story.
Whoa, that'll just bring chills down your body, man. A serial killer's daughter. You could just think of her, whether you believe she knew or not, laying in the house and waking up to this person every single day and looking at him like he's her hero and he's her father and this, that, and the third. And he has a totally different side to him, another life. Oh my gosh.
Of faith, love, and overcoming.
It's been like a cathartic process of having to go do really hard work and find those memories again of my father that I had lost, and try to separate my dad back out as my dad and remove the BTK from it.
Number 6, Dutch Girls of Panama. Scrolling through Instagram, chances are you'll stumble across a number of pleasant photos like these. Standing against a colorful backdrop with green hills and blue skies, 22-year-old Lisana Froon appears to have a lovely day ahead of her. Froon was on vacation with 21-year-old Chris Kramers, a fellow Dutch student seen in another photo at the same spot. The two set out for a hike in Panama on April 1st, 2014 when these pics were taken. This was also the day that Froon and Kramers disappeared, resulting in a grueling search. 10 weeks down the line, Froon's backpack was uncovered with her camera inside. Froon and Kramers' remains were eventually found scattered across the jungle, with the cause of death still up for debate. Number 5, Travis Alexander. Travis Alexander was 30 when this photo was taken of him in the shower. The person behind the camera was Jodi Arias, with whom Alexander had a shaky romantic relationship. This was the last photo ever taken of Alexander alive, as his friends found his body in the shower a few days later. It was only a matter of time until the authorities connected the dots and arrested his ex-girlfriend. Arias constantly changed her story, originally pleading innocence, later claiming that 2 intruders broke in, and ultimately testifying that she killed Alexander in self-defense.
Why? The simple answer is that he attacked me, and I defended myself.
In the end, Arias was deemed guilty of first-degree murder, receiving a life sentence.
We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the above entitled action upon our oaths, do find the defendant as to count 1, first-degree murder, guilty.
Alexander appears off guard in this photo. He clearly had no idea what was coming. Number 4, the Eternal Shadow. At face value, this dark outline of a person could be chalked up to some harmless graffiti. While we wish that were the case, this shadowy figure resulted from the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In August of 1945, the U.S. dropped 2 nuclear weapons, Little Boy and Fat Man, that resulted in anywhere between 129 and 226,000 deaths.
At 8:14, it was a sunny day. At 8:15, it was a hellscape.
Whoever this person was, it appears they were using a walking stick during their final moments when the blast hit. As a result of the bombing, an imprint of this unknown soul was left on the steps. This wasn't an isolated incident, as numerous shadows can still be found around the bombing sites, forever immortalizing those horrifying days. Number 3, the Happy Creepy Killer. Without any background information, the wide-eyed kid in this picture probably wouldn't strike you as very threatening. When you know the whole story, however, that innocent smile of his will quickly turn into a ghastly grin. This curly-haired 17-year-old is Jeffrey Franklin, who killed his parents and attacked his 3 siblings. Following a car chase, the authorities cornered Franklin at a dead end. The photo shows Franklin in the back of a police vehicle, not appearing especially distraught over the atrocities he's committed or his impending future behind bars. claiming he felt like a, quote, evil being had taken over him. Franklin pled guilty and received 3 consecutive life sentences.
I don't blame anybody for the reactions to me because I feel that I justified most of them.
Number 2, goodbye, John Lennon. We're all familiar with the music of John Lennon as well as his tragic fate. Photographer Paul Gorish couldn't have predicted it at the time, but this would reportedly be the last picture anyone took of Lennon. The image seems innocent enough as the former Beatle signs his autograph for an apparent admirer. Lennon's impending demise was creeping up in the photo's corner, however. The man standing next to him is none other than Mark David Chapman, the one responsible for Lennon's untimely demise.
Hard to get to write at first. And then he wrote his name, John Lennon, and then underneath that, 1980. And he looked at me, as I mentioned earlier, he said, "Is that all? Do you want anything else?"
6 hours or so after this photo was taken, Lennon and Yoko Ono encountered Chapman again outside of their apartment building, the Dakota. With Lennon's back turned, Chapman drew his firearm, and the music world would never be the same again.
So I called the Daily News. He said to me, you think you have what? And he said, "Paul, are you sure that this is the man that you believe killed him?" And I said, "Well, that's the man named Mark from Hawaii who was waiting out there all day with the album who got the autograph."
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1, Tyler Hadley and the Red Solo Cup. Mere hours before raising his red Solo Cup in this pic, 17-year-old Tyler Hadley hid his parents' cell phones and shut their dog in a closet. Hadley proceeded to end his mother's life and then did the same to his father. After cleaning up the mess, Hadley shared on Facebook he was throwing a party that very night. At said party, Hadley told his best friend Michael Mandel all about his heinous actions.
After he told me, I didn't believe him because he's been my best friend forever. I would never suspect anything like this. And I was looking around. He told me if I look enough, I can see signs. I looked on the floor, I could see signs of blood. And that's when I went around back and looked in his parents' bedroom.
Using his phone, Mandel subsequently took this picture with Hadley, knowing it would be the last time they ever saw each other. Leaving the party, Mandel called Crime Stoppers. This led to Hadley's arrest and life sentence without parole.
Nearly 3 years of pain and worry now starting to slowly subside with the stroke of a gavel.
Have you ever been shocked by a supposedly inconspicuous picture? Let us know in the comments below.
You could see the horror in his face.